Okay, sit yourself on your left. Come into cross legs and just have a little wriggle about. Just make sure that you feel like you're sitting evenly with balance on the seat bones. So after you've been there for a little while, maybe you need to readjust. Hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, elevate the chest up to the ceiling, draw your shoulders down away from your ears. Just look down at the floor, look at something that isn't moving, so that you keep your eyes still in your sockets. Listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Just reassess your levelness as you draw your attention inwards. Maybe readjust if you feel that you need to. And then bring your hands into Namaste. Press the palms firmly together. Lengthen the armpits into the elbows into the heels of the hands. And with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. So long, slow, deep, deliberate inhalations, long, slow, deep, deliberate exhalations. Just listening to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Just filling the lungs from the bottom to the top. Feeling that the inhalation raises the chest upwards, broadening the chest, broadening the collarbones. With each inhalation, we draw in energy. Energy from the universe, drawn into the physical body. Just filling the body with the energy of the universe. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area as you release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open. Just hold onto your knees. Hold onto your knees and elevate the chest upwards. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And with an exhalation, turn to the right, drawing your abdomen across, your ribs across, your shoulders across. Just listening to the sound of the breath, using the out breath to intensify the turn. And then come back to the center. Take a deep inhalation, and then again with the exhalation, turn to the left. Drawing your abdomen and your ribs and your shoulders across. Keeping your neck soft. Just feeling how the spine releases energy as you turn. And then come back to the center. Just come off your lift and come down onto your knees. Sit back on your heels. Have a block for your head. So we're going to come into Adho Mukha Virasana, but often we go all the way down to the floor. We usually go down all the way down to the floor, but having a block for your head just gives you a different experience of the pose. So just see if you can tell the difference. So wriggle into your heels. So try and get the outer buttock into the inner heel. Press in the shin down into the floor and lifting up into the chest, driving the chest up towards the ceiling. Taking deep inhalations, deep exhalations, leading from the heart area, trying to keep the seat bones down in contact with the heels, come forwards. Pressing the palms deeply into the floor. Keep lifting from the heart region. Because when you lift from the heart region, the shoulder blade region naturally draws in. So keep lengthening forwards from the heart. Keeping the head lifted and attentive. Attentive to the feeling and the action of the pose. And then just bring the forehead, the area between the eyebrows, down onto the block. And spend a little time with your head supported on the block. Keep sitting down on the heels. Keep the front chest lifted. So with the block underneath your head, you get a firmer action in the forehead region. So the area between the eyebrows, press that down into the floor. It helps to quieten the brain. But also when you're a little higher up, you maintain the lift of the chest. When you go all the way down, often that space diminishes. So it's good to give yourself space. Spread the palms, squeeze the outer elbows in, and then lengthen the armpits. Lengthen from the armpits down into the hips. Just breathing evenly and deeply listening to the breath. Come up onto your knees, turn your toes under, and then come up into dog down. Maybe you can press your forehead onto the block. So again, the area between the eyebrows. Maybe you can't, maybe you have to lift the block up higher, or maybe you need to make it lower. Come up into dog down, allowing some pressure to apply onto the forehead. Breathing evenly and deeply, tightening the kneecaps, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, backs of the thighs outwards, lifting the seat bones up towards the ceiling. So the shoulder blade region draws in. Breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. So press the forehead into the floor and lengthen the spine up into the seat bones. Forehead into the block even, not the floor. Take deep inhalations, filling the lungs with energy. Deep exhalations, distributing that energy around the body. Okay, step your feet forwards, come up into a standing position, and then have some blocks for your head. We're going to go into half uttanasana. So we're going to go into uttanasana in a slightly different way, but I want you to have a lift for your head. So you might want to pile up a couple of blocks like this, or you might want higher or lower. Just have some blocks where you can reach it, or you might just have the seat of a chair, and then you can rest your head on there. Have your feet as wide apart as your mat, with the toes turning inwards, pressing the big toes into the floor, stretching the little toes out to the side, really activating the kneecaps, lift up into the chest, and then raise your arms up, hitting the shins back so that your weight goes into your heels, lifting up into the chest. And then keeping the arms straight, come forwards, hinging at the hips, and then just come halfway, lengthen, driving forwards with the head, with the heart. Keep the head lifted, keep the arms lifted, and then reach down. If you can't reach the floor, then use blocks for your hands initially rather than for your head. But if you can reach the floor, then apply pressure to the forehead. Then lift the legs, lift the shins out of the ankle sockets. Tighten the kneecaps, so try not to bend the knees to accommodate the head. Lift the frontal thigh muscles up towards the top of the legs. If you can go down lower, then adjust your blocks so that your head is still supported, but keep coming forwards with the heart area. If you can reach around the heels, then do, but otherwise just keep the hands either on the shins or on the floor. If you can't get support for your head in uttanasana, then just have support for your hands. Pressing the forehead down into the floor. Lifting the seat bones up towards the ceiling so that you really lift the backs of the thighs into the backs of the knees. The backs of the knees into the backs of the thighs, backs of the thighs up towards the seat bones, lifting those seat bones up towards the ceiling. So you can bring your hands beyond your feet, on the outsides of your feet. Breathing evenly. After a little time, maybe you can come down even lower, but not at the expense of losing the access of your legs. Okay, and then just extend the head forwards, extend the heart area forwards in half uttanasana, using blocks underneath your hands if you need to. And then bring your hands into your hips, and then come up into a standing position, and then up into Tadasana. Just lift up into the chest, driving the chest upwards, lifting up into the, driving the heart area up towards the ceiling. Just breathing evenly and deeply, activating your legs, tighten your kneecaps. Lift your toes to activate your legs. So lift all of the toes, especially the little toe, off the floor. And then hit your shins back, tighten the kneecaps, and turn the fronts of the thighs inwards. Then tuck the tailbone in. Drive the abdomen up towards the diaphragm, heart area, and then lift up into the chest. Okay, just get your belt and put it over your right shoulder again. So we're going to come into, we're going to spend a little time again in gomuhkhasana, like we did yesterday. So stretch your left arm forwards, really spreading into the fingertips. Turn that palm all the way out, rotating the upper arm in the socket, rotating that upper arm in the socket. Keep the arm straight for as long as you can, keep the shoulders level for as long as you can, and then bend the elbow and assist the arm up the back. Try and reach your neck with your fingertips. Raise up with the right arm. Extend deeply into the fingertips. And then reach down. Now, most people can get hold of the hand behind them. I can't, because I've got such a stiff shoulder on this lower arm side. So I need to bring my hand onto the belt. And then once you've got hold of the belt, then the action is to just try and creep the hands closer together. So breathe evenly in through the nose and out through the nose. Pull in the top elbow up to the ceiling, pull in the bottom elbow down to the floor. Just listening to the breath. So you're there for a little while, just try and creep the hands a little bit closer together. Try and get that bottom hand to creep up the back a little bit more. So try and find that space. Pulling the bottom elbow to the floor, the top elbow to the ceiling. Just maintain that Tadasana legs, spreading the toes, hitting the shins back, tightening the kneecaps, hitting the thigh, the front of the thigh through to the back of the thigh, turning the fronts of the thighs in, tucking the tailbone in, lifting the chest. Just breathing evenly and deeply, having a bit of a tug of war between the two elbows. Just gently, slowly keep creeping the hands a bit closer together. If you've got hold of the fingers, and see if you can get hold of the palms or the wrists. Just breathe into the areas of resistance. and then release the top arm. You might have to drop the chest a little to release the back arm, and then stretch down into the fingertips, lift up into the chest, dandasana the legs. Turning the palms all the way out, just feel whether the resistance has changed. Breathe evenly and deeply, turning the palms so that they face outwards, stretching the thumbs towards the back of the room, the little fingers towards the front of the room. We spread the fingers, spread the palms. And then release. Bring the belt over your left shoulder, and then stretch forwards with the right arm, spread into the fingertips, stretch into the fingertips of the left hand as well. Turn that right palm all the way out, rotating the upper arm in the socket. So try and keep the arm straight, rotating the arm in the socket. Try and keep the shoulders relatively level. Try and keep the arm high. And then at the last minute, bend the elbow. And again, just assist the hand up the back towards the neck. It's a good way of kind of just washing your back in the shower as well, and applying sun cream. So stretch up into the left arm. Feel that the previous pose is probably still in that shoulder. And then reach down. So on this side, I can get hold. So often you'll find that one side is stiffer than the other, but regular practice of this, if you've got stiff shoulders like I have, regular practice of gomuhkhasana is really beneficial because it helps to just open up the stiffness of the shoulders. It feels like there's a lot of resistance in there initially, but after a little while, if you spend a little time in poses that challenge your resistance, and obviously you've got to do that with ahimsa, this sense of non-violence, this sense that you're just doing it, you're being in the pose, just observing. If of course the resistance increases and become pain, then you come out of the pose immediately. But if you can stay in the pose, prizing the elbows apart, and that resistance diminishes with the breath, then it's doing some good. Breathe in through the nose, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top. Just feel stretch in the arms. After you've been there for a little while, just see if you can creep the hands a little closer together. Okay, and then just release that top arm. That's always the easy one. And then just drop the chest perhaps a little, and then release the back hand. Just be in Tadasana with the legs, with the chest. And then again, rotate the palms all the way out, giving yourself space in the armpit in order to rotate. Stretching the thumbs towards the back of the room, the little fingers towards the front, stretching the other fingers down to the floor, really spreading the palms. Just breathing evenly, deeply, listening to the breath. And then release, and then come back into Tadasana. So you can just drop the belt for the moment. Just lift up into the chest. Now there's another way of gomuhkhasana. So Kat, I know you said your shoulders were quite stiff after yesterday, but this, sometimes you have to work into that stiffness. So we're going to do gomuhkhasana again, you'll be glad to discover. But we're going to use a ledge or a post to try and kind of intensify it. So I'm going to show you on this post here. This is just holding up the ceiling, so obviously I'm not going to put a lot of my weight onto it. But I'm going to reach around behind me and then assist the hand up the back and then take hold of the post. So you can see that I've got my hand holding the post. I can already feel after I've done it once that there's more space in my shoulders. In this shoulder, it's not as stiff, it's not as painful. So you hold on to so you can do this with a door frame or a door, and then take hold. And then you walk your feet away from the wall slightly, draw the chest forwards, and then keep in hold. It's probably easier to do it onto a ledge because it's easier to hold onto, like a windowsill. And then you just bend the knees and then drawing the chest away slightly, bend your knees, and then see if you can come down. Then you reach up, reach down, and then like magic you saw on the other side previously, I can now access the pose. So pretty intense. If you've got really bad shoulder problems, then just do gomuhkhasana the other way. But I've got this shoulder here has become kind of unbelievably stiff over the last year or so. And these poses are really, I can already feel that stiffness has kind of really changed. It's really much less. So you can do it on a door, you can do it on a ledge, a window sill, like something like this. You would have to come down really low if you did it like that. But that may be like a high windowsill or a shelf. Please don't pull a shelf off the wall. Just find somewhere, a door or a door frame, just something that's relatively straight, and then bring the left hand up the back. Try and walk that hand up the back like you do at the beginning of the normal pose, and then you can even come up onto your tiptoes and then get hold of the post or the door or whatever it is that you're using, and then just bring the heels down. Draw your chest away from the wall, and then can you bend your knees a little. Keep hold of the belt as much, the post as much as you can. Reach up with the right hand, and then reach down. See if you can get hold. So I can get hold with all of my fingers now, and then just walk away from the post or the wall or whatever you were using, and just come into the pose. So breathe into the pose. Just feel the challenge of the pose. Tadasana the legs. Lift the chest. Breathe deeply. Push your out breath into areas of resistance. Okay, and then just very gently release. And then just come back into Tadasana. Turn the palms all the way out, spreading the fingers, spreading the palms, lifting the chest. And then soften. And then come back to the post or the wall or the door. And then again, stretch the right hand up the wall, up the post or whatever. Come up onto your tiptoes. And then hold onto the door or whatever it is that you've got. And then try and bring your heels down. Draw the chest away from the wall a little, just to give yourself that space. Maybe bend your knees. Reach up with the left arm, and then see if you can take hold again on this side. I've got hold much better than I had while I was using the belt earlier on. And then lift up into the chest. So maybe it's a little bit of brute force perhaps, but once you get into the pose, then you do all the work to soften where there is resistance. Extend the elbows apart, pulling the elbows apart. Breathing evenly, deeply listening to the sound of the breath. And then release the top arm. And then release bottom arm, stretch down into the fingertips. Turning the palms all the way out. Spreading the fingers. The more you spread the palms and the fingers, the more you open the chest. Breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. And then just gently release your arms. So we're going to go into malasana. So we've done a lot of work there in the shoulders. We're going to go into malasana. So sit yourself on just a small lift. You don't necessarily need the lift, but to be honest, most of us probably need the lift. You might also need a couple of extra blocks at the side so that it will just to help you to lift off, because in malasana, if you can't lift off just by kind of propelling yourself forwards, then have some blocks, and then when you come in, you can just kind of lift yourself up and come forwards. So stretch your legs away. So sitting on a lift, stretch your legs away, lift up into the chest. Just breathe evenly and deeply listening to the breath. Press the legs down into the floor. Feel that the abdomen can lift away from the tops of the legs. Lifting up from the heart region. And then bend your knees. Bring your feet in as close to the body as you can. So have the inner edge of the feet together. Grip around your knees and then lift up from the heart area. Driving the heart area up to the ceiling, keeping the head lifted. And then reach up with your arms, keep lifting up with the heart area, keeping the head lifted, and then come forward. See if you can lift yourself off the blocks. If you can't, then just bring your hands to the side and you can just push yourself up with the blocks. Just keeping the heart region driving forwards, lifting up into the chest, keeping the head lifted, keeping the arms lifted, keeping the head lifted and attentive. Trying to keep the heels down on the floor. Come forwards a little more, trying to draw the lower ribs through the knees. Keep the shoulders away from the ears. I always hunch my shoulders in this pose, so I have to tell myself to lengthen my shoulders away from my ears. Driving forwards. Breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. Okay, and then just gently guide yourself back. Hold onto your knees. Feel the energy around the chest. Breathing evenly and deeply. And then just come into baddha konasana, soles of the feet together, staying sitting on the blocks. When I'm sitting on a lift, the traditional way of holding onto the big toes, or even getting hold around the big toes, feels like it pulls me down too much. So when I'm sitting on a lift, I prefer to hold onto the shins, lifting up into the chest, turning the crease of the elbows to face the front so that the collarbone is broad. Breathing, lengthening from the inner groin into the inner knee, obviously on both sides. Drawing the inner groin to the inner knee around to the outer knee into along the outer hip and into the hip. Lift up into the chest. If you struggle to maintain the lift of the chest while you activate in that way, then slide a belt underneath your feet. Give yourself plenty of lift and then feel the difference. Feel how liberating it feels to lift up into the chest. But keep the legs activated, lengthening these inner thighs into the inner knees around to the outer knees, and the outer knees along the outer thigh and into the hip. And then that same action, that kind of circular action of legs. Let's try and draw the knees down to the floor. Okay, and then just draw your knees in and then just stretch the legs away. Come up into dandasana. So stretching the legs away, you can have the inner edge of the feet touching or the feet slightly apart. Lift up into the chest and then turn to the right side. Feeling that both legs are still working evenly. You're lifting the torso out of the hips, leaving the hips where they are, turning the abdomen and the ribs and the shoulders, keeping the neck soft. Digging the back hand into the floor to help maintain the lift of the chest. And then come back to the center. So really pinning the legs down into the floor and then turn to left. Lifting out of the hips up into the torso. Keeping those legs really firm. Lifting out of the hip socket. Turning the abdomen, the ribs, the shoulders. Really activating the legs. And then come back to the center. Let's come down onto the floor and go into supta baddha konasana. So down onto the floor, supta baddha konasana, let the knees fall apart. If there's stiffness in your hips, you can put some blocks underneath your thighs. But this pose just helps to open this inner groin, lengthening from the inner groin to the inner knee, from the inner knee around to the outer knee, from the outer knee along the outside of the thigh up into the hip. And then that circular action, see if you can really encourage that activated circular action of the upper legs. Push the heels firmly together. Draw the abdomen towards the spine. Stretch your arms up to the ceiling, interlock the fingers right into the webbing of the hands, turn the palms all the way out, squeeze the elbows in, keep the legs really firmly activated. Those inner thighs rotating to the inner knees, to the outer knees, to the outer thighs. And then lengthen your arms along the floor. If there's stiffness in your shoulders, put blocks under your hands or a folded blanket. Otherwise, just use the floor. Just breathing evenly, keeping the legs really firmly activated, lengthening the inner groin to the inner knee, the outer thigh into the hip, from the hip into the inner groin, from the inner groin into the inner knee, etc. Really activating those hips, drawing the abdomen towards the spine. And then release your arms, just swap the interlock of the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then lengthen your arms along the floor. And then release your arms. Just rest your hands on your lower ribs. And then draw your knees towards each other. Just pull your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from top to bottom, from side to side. Just a gentle massage on the spine. And then pull your knees towards your seat bones. Just lift yourself up. Come right onto the tops of the shoulders by gathering the shoulder blades together. Bring the seat bones, the tailbone, sacrum area onto the block. Hold onto the edges of the mat. Gather your shoulder blades so you're right on the tops of your shoulders. And then lengthen your legs out one at a time. Just make sure that feels okay in your back. And then if you can, lengthen your legs away. Then or just keep the legs bent. So it's a good stretch of the hips. Keep the arms really firmly activated, holding onto the sides of the mat, trying to tear the mat apart. Turn the crease of the elbows up to face the ceiling and try and rotate them out to the sides of the room. So the more firmly the arms are working, the easier it becomes to come onto the top of the shoulder. Activate the legs in Tadasana, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, lengthening from the inner groin into the inner heel, keeping the toes pointing up towards the ceiling. Keep the heart area lifting up. In this pose, there's Jalandhara Bandha, chin in contact with the chest. Just take deep inhalations, filling the lungs from the top to the bottom and distributing the energy of the breath around the physical body. Okay, then bend your knees, bring your feet closer to the block, and then lift yourself up off the floor, lifting the tailbone up off the block, and then adjust your shoulders as you bring yourself down onto the floor. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just easing out the tension of the back. Get hold of the feet, and then just have the feet apart. Just get hold of the outside edge of the feet and just stretch into the happy baby pose. Just stretching out the hips as you massage the back. So draw the feet up towards the head region, draw them down towards the seat bone region. Just working your back, but also stretching out the hips at the same time, stretching the hamstrings. It feels nice to stretch out the legs. And then just gently release. And then roll yourself up into a seated position, and then have a bolster if you've got one. If you haven't, then you can just use some cushions. So you just have the bolster. So we're going to come into shavasana. So have a blanket for underneath your head as well, head and neck as well. And then you've got the bolster underneath your knees, and then just allow the body to rest into the floor. Or you can bring the feet into baddha konasana with the legs slightly elevated, just to again just help to kind of open up the hips. So if you're in this kind of baddha konasana variation, you've got a couple of minutes to relax. So after a minute or two, then just stretch your legs out in typical shavasana. Otherwise, just have the hands at the sides of the body. Just breathing evenly and deeply listening to the breath. Just observe the feeling of the physical pose. So straighten out your legs if you were in that baddha konasana, supta baddha konasana variation. The bolster underneath the knees, softening out the spine. Observe that lightness of energy radiating out from the bones, radiating energy into the muscles, into the flesh, and into the skin. So that energy comes from the prana, or the oxygen we have ingested through our practice. Breathing more deeply than usual, bringing clarity to the mind, to the brain. Just basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. And then when you're ready, just wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers. Bend your knees, draw your knees in towards the chest, but have the feet just resting on the bolster for a moment, knees together, feet apart. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just a grounding massage, just bringing the body back into the room. And then roll over onto the right side, just stay down for a breath or two. And then stretch. And then stretch out the top leg. Come back up into a seated position. I just kicked over some books, but I thought it was a cat. Come into cross legs. Just a final cross legs with the hands in the masti. Drawing your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning. There's good, positive energy that comes through the standing poses, the long held shoulder poses, the hip poses, reclining poses and the twists. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to acknowledge the positive energy you have created inside. And then radiate some of that positive energy out into the world. And then raise your head as you bring your hands down onto your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. So hopefully you feel as though you've really lifted your energy. There's hopefully lots of good movement in your shoulders and in your hips. And you've got lots of good energy to put into your day. So thank you very much for joining me.